I'd like to thank the organizers of this Remembrance Day ceremony for the opportunity to promote peace today instead of glorifying war, which is what usually happens in Canada on Remembrance Day. Like Ruth, I too was a former school teacher, and I recall when the staffs at my schools organized Remembrance Day assemblies at which we taught the children to sing songs such as "Where Have All the Flowers Gone?" and "Blowing in the Wind," and we talked about peace. But all that abruptly changed in 2001 when Canada became involved in the war in Afghanistan. Then the Remembrance Day assemblies came with an official representative of the Canadian forces, a slideshow of all of the fallen Canadian soldiers, and propaganda about little Afghani girls going to school. Why the change? It's because Canada was engaged in the war in Afghanistan for 13 long years and has been at war ever since. Part of the permanent war, U.S. war of terror against the people of the Arab and Muslim people of the South and of the Middle East, people of indigenous origin, from Afghanistan to Haiti, to Libya, to Syria, and Iraq. If we should remember anything today, it's what Julie talked about. It's all the millions of civilians, innocent civilians who lost their lives in the wars of the 20th century, and the tens of millions who lost everything and were turned into refugees which flooded across Europe and North America. All at a time when humanity should have been pulling together to ensure our common survival on a livable planet. Trillions of dollars that might have gone into social programs and a Green New Deal were squandered instead on arms. So what can we as Canadians learn from all those human tragedies? I'll tell you. Canada should get out of the business of making war as a junior partner of the U.S. empire, as a willing junior partner, I should say, of the U.S. empire. Thank you. When the U.S. president tells us we have to up our military spending to 2% and says you have to spend $19 billion of your money to buy new fighter jets, we should say in return, no way. We don't need to spend more money on arms. We need to spend less on arms. And we need to spend that $19 billion. That would pay for 1 year of a Green New Deal in Canada to make our future livable for our children and grandchildren on this planet. When the Western Security Intelligence Network, known as the Five Eyes, and Canada is one of those, Canada, US, UK, New Zealand, Australia, pressures the Canadian government to create a new Cold War against China and Russia, to arrest Meng Wanzhou, to illegally exclude Huawei from the deployment of the Canadian 5G network, and to send warships into the South China Sea. We should tell the Five Eyes, we don't want to see your white supremacist organization anymore, your white supremacist remnant of the British Empire. And when our federal government tells us that we must follow along with the G20 and impose harsh economic sanctions against 20 of the poorest countries of the world, we should respond by saying what the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said. He said, there's a pandemic on. Lift all those economic sanctions now. And finally, when the United Nations gets agreement from enough countries to create a treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons, which could be the scourge of all humanity, and Trudeau offers up his usual lame excuse that he can't sign on because Canada is part of NATO, then we should say to Mr. Trudeau, well then, get out of NATO. It's not rocket science, my friends. It just requires that the peace movement recognize that the permanent war in which we live is a product of a racist imperial system that abuses people of color and indigenous origin right here in Canada and around the world. And we should fight for peace in Canada by demanding our federal government get out of the the business of systemic discrimination against those people here in Canada and around the world. We should get out of NATO. We should stop engaging in the wars of the U.S. empire and develop a peaceful and independent foreign policy. Thank you very much.